Hi, everyone. My name is Beatrice Lozada, and I'm registered in the Global Conference for Transformation. Today, what we will be talking about is the social isolation and suppression of emotions in children of incarcerated parents. So currently, there's over 2.5 million people that are incarcerated in the USA. More than 5 million children have a parent in jail. My father was in jail for 36 years. He was incarcerated 5 years before I was born. I was born on a conjugal visit, and I grew up pretty much in the prison system. One of the things that really stuck out for me, probably one of the worst things, was getting to a visit sometimes when my father was transferred from place to place, and I only maybe got to see him depending on how far he was. And sometimes if it was once every 4 months because he was 12 hours away, some of the jail systems wouldn't allow me to hug my father. And that was one of my most painful memories. I had my father released. I petitioned for his release, and I spent my very first Thanksgiving with him at the age of 29. And he's been home for 10 years now. So I want to just open the conversation up to Light and Frankie and have us really talk about our experience and who we are and how the prison system has impacted us. So I'll introduce Light.
Hey. Hey, B, Frankie, what's going on? So thank you for inviting me to speak. It's not always an easy thing to talk about, but it's definitely been therapeutic and heart touching to be able to speak to other people who've gone through similar experiences. And for me, my mother has been incarcerated for 31 years out of my 41 years of life, and she's been incarcerated currently for 8.5 years out of my son's 9 years of life. So as I'm just sharing how this has impacted not just me, but my son, but as well as even like pseudo like siblings as well. And the duration of me finding out this totality of my mom's incarceration came about, me doing research to find out how ways to support my mom, right? So all my life, I've been in a place of always trying to save and support her. But this last time, and then the last bit of my mom going into being incarcerated has been, it's been challenging. So, maybe a couple other things that I'll share as it comes up, but, it's something that's impacted me as a child, still impacts me as a man, even impacts me as a father. And, I'm gonna pass it over to Frankie right now, and then we can talk a little bit more.
Yeah. I definitely understand the challenges. I appreciate you sharing, Light, for sure. It's not easy. We are definitely the minority, and it really does stink because finding those in similar shoes is very hard to do. One, because we typically don't address these certain issues. It kind of just happens per se, for a multitude of reasons, whether it's friends coming over and seeing that you have a divided family, or in the matter of, let's say, having a step parent like I do. It's part of that conversation in schools when everybody's like, well, hey, so are your parents divorced together? Well, they're divorced. Why are they divorced? And it's kind of that weird taboo and kind of bringing that out there. It's definitely a stigma behind it. I had to live with that kind of stigma rather than just accepting of what's going on. For example, when schools found out as elementary school, everybody had this negative connotation on myself that I was also a criminal. Like I was going to end up just like my father. Like I was a bad person to be around. It's really not the case. It's really sad to have to deal with that kind of stigma in your life. And it's right for that reason that we kind of keep it to ourselves and we don't want to bring it up. It's not really something. Where it hit me the most is, I was very friendly. I thankfully had a lot of friends, but I definitely felt it when I'd go over to their houses and they had family gatherings and complete families. It was always something that I was very envious about in that sense. So it's definitely huge, huge impact just for the children, let alone what their influences happened on me. In my scenario, I got my father back when I was 21. I remember that it was very, very emotional for sure. However, I did spend a lot of time really expecting somebody different. You know, I spent all my life expecting this person to be this great person, and what I had in return was really, really not what I had expected. So it's the impact is for sure different for everybody in their scenarios, but that one was just mine.
You know, Frankie, you shared something that made me just think, and, and thank you, because for me, as you know, to summarize it, you know, I just remember 4 years old, my mom being brought in to a family's funeral, and she was in handcuffs, and you know, to my, I think it was my great grandmother, right, and then she was gone, right, and then, you know, another part of my life, she was around, and and then she was gone, right, and then a big part of my life, from age around maybe 10 to 16, you know, while she was incarcerated, you know, I allowed myself to believe that she was dead. It was easier, right? It was easier to believe that she was dead because you pinpointed, you know, the points of like going to school and not having to speak about it, or if somebody speaks about it, you know, it's like hush hush, don't say something, or you know, for me, you know, I remember a few family members taking me to go visit, or someone trying to say that, oh, she's in school, you know, college, you know, like that. And for me, it was one of those like I heard a lot of my friends talk about like their dads, like how you guys are speaking, right? But the point of not having my mom, you know, that was like raised by my grandparents, you know, a lot of surrogate family. It just always felt like an outcast. You know, where do I fit in? So you pinpointed a lot of it. So it makes us resilient. You know, it does make us resilient.
Oh, it definitely does. And I feel for you too, like, because, you know, I don't have children of my own, but I can imagine having to be a parent and having to have those talks with somebody, an offspring, uh, and really having them understand. Because at that age, you know, you don't really understand. It's really, I didn't fully understand it till I was an adult. And now I've accepted it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I can't change the past. You know, my father was incarcerated for 34 years. You know, I'm only 31, so you can do the math, you know. And granted, he's been out for 10 years. So I spent my whole life without him. So it's tough because it's always a void that you always really wanted to hit, but you never really got the chance. And to be you know, the first years of your child's life is probably some of the most impactful. And to know that they're going to have to build a bond, hopefully whenever that time comes, it's really tough. So, I mean, I commend you for being that strong individual in your son's life and kind of being that figure. And best you can do is kind of just be there for them and just kind of show them the love and affection.
You know, when when Beatrice asked me to join in on this, I thought about one of the most challenging times that I had, and I thought about, you know, my mother being released from prison when I was getting ready to graduate from college, and I had a, you know, tough life choices. It was whether to pick her up or go take one of my finals in school, right? So that it's like people have no clue what it is to be a child, you know, and to still, you know, constantly, I call it distracting the distraction, right? I call it distracting the distraction because our heart always wants our parent. And then there's like this guard, like, you know, I always say my heart is in a cage, like I'm locked up too, like currently as we're doing this. You know?
I agree with you there.
Right.
I was going to say too, like, you know, parents, kids, I was saying like how parents sometimes said my friends would say like, I hate my dad. And I would be like, you have no idea like what you have. And I couldn't really share that with them because I didn't want to not be accepted. Like, I was, it was just, I had the shame that I grew up with, and it was just shameful to be me. And then especially growing up with like this heavy religious background where we were taught that if you were bad, then bad things happen. It was like, wow, how bad was I that I deserved to have a dad in jail? And I was saying something about, you know, shame and other things happen too. Like if you have a broken family like that, there's finances, getting help with my mother had 7 kids and with my father, and it was getting those resources, babysitters, trying to figure out what to do, how to do it. You know, I experienced molestation as a kid from extended family members, you know, and as a kid, it's like, what do you say? How do you say this? Like, I didn't want to impact, like have somebody else be arrested and impact somebody else's life the way my life was impacted with having my father be in jail. So I never said anything about any of those things. And with many of the people I speak with, there's other children that feel the same. Well, hey, you know what? My uncle molested me. I didn't want to put that person in jail. So I feel that a lot of our community is suffering a lot from some of sexual abuse and just the conversation of we're the junk of society. So not only can we be rejected by people, but, you know, we reject ourselves in that sense where it's not okay to be us.
Right. You know, when you shared about the rejection part, I went to a Catholic high school, and you talked about like religion and not being able to speak about it. So I just recall how, I don't know if this occurred for you guys, but at a certain point in time, it was like I learned how to dodge the conversation before they even got there.
Yeah.
Right? I learned how to, like, you know, maneuver around. If it looked like it's going to a family type conversation, you know, I learned, like, let me change the subject, or let me change my physical environment from being in that conversation so I don't have to open up or be like you shared, Frankie, about, you know, people either pitying me, right? Either pitying me or then judging me. And, you know, and also, right, I had a reputation. I acted out as a kid because I was hurting, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like, but still, my biggest thing was the greatest insult is like, I'm not my parent. I'm not my mother. Like, don't you blame me for somebody else's stuff, which led me into get into sometimes some situations. And one of the things I would like to share quick is, you know, at 15, I broke a promise to myself, and I found myself in trouble with the law as well, right? And me breaking that promise also set something off for me, which has fueled a career for me in youth development, right? I'm an artist. I've acquired 2 degrees, and, you know, I actually have created my own companies, and currently, right, I provide coaching, actually in resilience, you know, amongst a lot of other things. But the biggest point and factor is like, just because we've experienced what we've experienced, you know, doesn't mean that we aren't successful and worthy.
And you're right. And it's crazy that you said that that you got in trouble with the law too. I feel like that's usually typically the case. I mean, I thankfully had never been in that situation, but it's not uncommon for, in fact, we're actually more prone to following down those lines. Mm-hmm. I think it really depends on your background too. Like you know, my mother's stance on it was she did not want us, like she put a hard line on what we did, the environment that we lived on. So we're grateful for sure that was our scenario, but it's not everybody's, and not everybody has that kind of guidance. and they end up falling, unfortunately, down those lines. And it's a sad case because it's true. As a child growing up, you don't have that guidance. We don't have that knowing from right from wrong for more of the times. And it's kind of part of us. You know, a lot of times, unfortunately, minorities and people from lower income areas are the ones that end up getting in more trouble. And it's just, that's just the way it has been for years, and it's just how it's been. And because of that, it's just we're stigmatized, and we're just part of that population. And it's, I'm glad we all came out of it. We're better people for sure. And I wish there were more folks like us, but it's really something that needs attention. In this country, we have the most people incarcerated per capita than any other country in the entire world. So it's definitely rough for here. And then plus our reform system really needs some kind of advancement, man, because it's really terrible. You know, there's other countries where people can do book reports and study and get reduced sentences, which gets them out in better shape, more educated, and hopefully in a better position to be more of that figure. You know, unfortunately, the side of my dad that I saw when he came out was not a positive one for me. And I kept on for years making excuses of him because he spent majority of his life inside a prison cell than outside. And he still is. He has still been more inside than out. I think he has a couple more years left if my math is right, which is a scary, scary feeling.
You know, we all have feelings, you know, and I think it's important, you know, for people to understand, you know, and I say this intentionally, whether you're a young man dealing with this or a young lady impacted by this, whether it's your mother, your father incarcerated, or right, your grandmother or your grandfather incarcerated, because I speak from the space of understanding that people get that this is a problem in our society, right? In our society, like this is unfortunately it's a business, right? And it's a business that actually spills over into so many other industries, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just thankful for I'm really thankful for the elders in my community and in any and every positive example that I've had throughout my life to help speak the greatness within me, you know, and you know, like I said, it's no one has an understanding or clue what it is to be a child watching their parent that they love be trapped in a cage, and you can't help them.
I'd love to see more resources where there's more awareness and have this be a discussion in school, because since there are many people affected, to reinforce the child that like what you guys were, it was mentioned in the conversation that we're not the person who committed the crime, and we shouldn't have to live with that shame or regret, and also so that we can really accept ourselves, and what is it, the opportunity for us to for more people to speak out so they can see some of the good we do in this world. Like I volunteer for organizations to help families, you know, just we're good people. We're good people. And yes, we just had an unfortunate situation. And I also think awareness so that people who are incarcerated or who are thinking of committing a crime could see that what kind of impact it could have on their children.
You know, and